Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of our Revit Starter Series. My name's Robin, and I'm taking over from Mark today as he is on leave. And today we're going to be looking at some BIM workflows using some of the relevant tool sets inside of Autodesk Revit. Just a bit of an introduction, I guess, before we get on. As some of you may or may not know me, my name's Robin. As I say, I'm the technical director here at Man & Machine in the UK. And I've been using Autodesk software for the 20 plus years. I'm cross-discipline, so I've worked in both the manufacturing and construction industries, and have a wide array of experience in using the likes of Revit and Inventor and Enscape, Twinmotion, 3ds Max, Autodesk Vault, and all of the workflows that connect them all together. From a personal perspective, I'm particularly keen and interested in the building information modeling workflows, driving automation in any way I can, whether it's through iLogic, through Dynamo, through connecting systems together and innovation, and also visualization as well. So I spend a lot of time in Autodesk Thread, in Enscape, in 3ds Max. And also have some IT background as well from infrastructure and server perspective. Outside of the work environment, anything that is involving my three girls, my family is top of my like to do. I'm a huge gaming fan as and when I get to do so, as well as motorsport, and generally anything geeky, because I am, as anyone that will have met me before, a self-confessed geek. As always with these, just a small push towards our blogs and YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked out our website, go and have a look at our blogs. There's a load of blogs, not just on Revit, but on all of the different software that we sell and support across all of the industries that we work with. And it might be that you find a tip or a trick or a how-to or an answer to one of your questions on that blog site. As well as that, please go ahead and check us out on YouTube, Man & Machine UK. We have a whole different range of videos from introductory, beginner level through to advanced workflows. And again, that might be a new feature, a tip, a trick. Head over, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and check out some of our content. So without further ado, we're going to jump across into Revit. So let's just open up Revit here. And what we're going to do today, as I say, is we're going to use this model that Mark's been putting together with you over the past several weeks, and start looking at how we can use some of the building information modeling tools and workflows inside of Revit. So for modern versions of Revit, these are kind of all installed out of the box. For older versions of Revit, they used to be a custom install that you'd need to download from the BIM Interoperability Tools website. Generally speaking, today, if you go and have a look down in your system tray and open up your desktop app, you'll find that on your desktop app you will have updates to them, and they will be updated regularly throughout your time with Autodesk Revit. So make sure you're running the latest IFC exporter. Make sure you're running the latest BIM interoperability tools that ensure that your COBie toolkits, your classification managers, and what have you are all running in the most up-to-date versions and hopefully bug-free. So there's a variety of different tools that I want to look at today. And the first one that we're going to cover off is IFC. So when we're working with building information modeling workflows using Revit, the likelihood is that at some point you're going to be asked to produce an IFC file, an industry foundation class file. This is an open format file that is a text-based file that will work on, generally speaking, any of the major BIM interoperability or BIM building information modeling authoring tools out there for reference. So if you're collaborating with someone using Tekla, they won't necessarily be able to open a Revit file for reference, but they will be able to open an IFC file. The same is true for ArchiCAD, other Trimble products, and many other tools and applications out there. There are also a number of third-party model validation or checking tools that will use IFC rather than native formats. So when you start working with a BIM project within your BIM execution plans and your exchange information requirements, the likelihood is that you will be asked for IFC files. Now, we're not going to go into the breadth of what an IFC file is and the technology and the background behind it today. We're just going to explain how to use it and how to use it well inside of Revit. So we've got this model here, and the first thing I want to do is probably just for the purpose of today, simplify this. I can see that Mark has placed a load of Enscape assets on one of the sessions that he's talked you through visualization. So I'm just going to rename this view here, and I'm just going to call this the Enscape view for use later so I don't break his file. And from there, I'm going to go ahead and create a new default 3D view. So by naming a 3D view that you have, it will create a new default one for you. And then using that view, let's just put it back onto fine level of detail and shaded here. I'm just going to start hiding some of the objects. So I'm just going to right click on one of the Enscape categories and say hide in view category, and that will hide those particular components. I'm not too fussed about these makeshift floors that he's given for grass, which again he's used from an Enscape visualization perspective, but I wanted to hide some of those heavier pieces of geometry. So generally speaking, creating an IFC file out of Revit is really straightforward. So I can come up to File, I can come down to Export, and then I have the ability to export to IFC. Before you do so, I really do implore you to go ahead and try and understand what it is that you're exporting and how you're exporting it. Because depending on the version of IFC that you're using, whether it's IFC 2x3, whether it's IFC 4, there are some things that you should and should not be made aware of as part of that export. And all I'm going to do is just say that it's well worth going onto your internet browser of choice, searching for the version of IFC that you're being asked for within those exchange information requirements or within those BIM execution plans, and trying to understand the differences between them. So all I'll say is most people are still actually using IFC 2x3. More and more people are getting onto the newer IFC 4 now. But 2x3 is quite old. It's a very old file format actually, and it's been around for a long time. Therefore, it's secure. It works well. It doesn't have a load of bugs in there. But because it's so old, there are things that are not in IFC 2x3 that are within IFC 4. So if I can just use this website, jump into the alphabetical listings here, and just use the entities, you'll notice that we've got 653 entities that we can use inside of IFC 2x3. If I do the same thing for IFC 4 and head over to the IFC 4 documentation page, let's go ahead and do the same thing, alphabetical listings, and let's go down to entities. You can see that there are 776. So between IFC 2x3 and IFC 4, there are over 100, sort of 130 odd additional types of component, let's say, that you are able to export. If your files by default are aligned to IFC 4, there are some things that may not export nicely to IFC 2x3. And vice versa, if your files aligned to IFC 2x3, it might be that things are not being exported as well as they could be if you were using IFC 4. Again, I'm not going to go into the nth degree of detail with that today. There are videos on our YouTube channel, and please reach out and ask us if you have any questions around that. But generally speaking, you need to be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So a couple of things inside of Revit. Let's just head over into a floor plan. So let's go on to the level 0, and let's just come in a little bit and just choose a component here to work on. And for the purpose of this, I'm going to go ahead and grab this door. As of Revit 2023 and newer, when you select a component and go to its edit type, you will notice that if you scroll down to IFC parameters down here, you have a number of different pieces of metadata that we can change or add to get this component to export correctly or export as we want it to inside of Revit. And what I'm talking about here is this IFC type to IFC as. So that's what IFC type would we like to export as, and then we've got this export type here. In older versions of Revit, we have the ability to create these manually. So if you was to head over to Google and search for Revit IFC export as, you will find a knowledge base article just here, which will give you some steps on how to create these parameters if they don't exist, which they won't in 22, 21, 19, so on and so forth. And it will give you some information on that. But as of 2023 and newer, these are all in there out of the box. So these parameters allow us to control any different ways that Revit should export this component. So clearly, this is a door. So what that means is if I go ahead and go to File and go to Export, head all the way to the bottom of the list and go to Options, we can go to IFC Options. And we can see that we've got all of the Revit categories. So if I scroll down to a Revit door, we can see that a Revit door will export as an IFC door. We could override the way that this component exports by changing those properties within the Edit Type dialog box to get it to export as something else. One great example of this is if you've got a curtain panel, for example, which is a door, we can tell it to export as a door rather than export as a curtain panel. So you wouldn't want to change, every curtain panel to say export as a door, because you'd want typically your curtain panels to export as a curtain wall and a type panel. But we could override an individual one or an individual family or an individual type, or even an instance to export as an individual IFC door. And we have a whole different range of workflows there. If we look at something like a conduit, or maybe a cable tray would be a bit better. When we look at a cable tray, IFC has a cable carrier segment, but then we can further subcategorize that. We can further subcategorize that to go down as a cable tray or a ladder or whatever it might be. And again, you've only got one option here by default, but by controlling these type specific properties, we can be really to the point with regards to how each object should export. So your first step is to make sure that all of those export in the way that you want them to export first and foremost. The next thing we want to do is, my screen's taking a little bit of time to update here, which is a little bit strange. There we go. The next thing that we want to do is explain the actual export options. So once you've set those and you've got all of your objects either defaultly exporting correctly or overridden exporting correctly using the appropriate documentation or requirements within your BEPs and EIRs, we want to come to File and Export IFC. By default, this will go to your download location. I'm just going to throw this into my desktop here and just create a new folder, which is called Revit. And I'm just going to save in that location. And then we have a session setup, for example. If we come across into Modify Setup, we get a load of default options. So these are very set in stone model view definitions, MVDs. And what these will allow us to do is say, well, I just want to export by the book to IFC 2x3 coordination view 2, or I want to export by the book to Kobe 2.4 design deliverables. These are, again, they're set in stone. They're kind of by the book, but we can take them and create our own if we have some specific requirements or some specific information that we need to put in there. And to do that, you go to In Session Setup, and then we choose the IFC version that we need to work to. So let's say that we're going IFC 2x3 coordination view 2. And then we're coming in and changing a load of different options. And again, for the purpose of today, I'm not going to go through all of those options, but we've got a load of different things that we can choose. So we can say that we want to export specific phases. We can say that we want to split walls by level if a wall spans or a column spans or a duct spans multiple levels. We can go to property sets, and we can choose to export on top of the default property sets all of Revit's property sets as well. One thing many of you would have seen if you go to IFC and go over to a door again, for example, if we use that same example, IFC door, An IFC door has property sets: piece set, door common, window glazing types, and window shading types. These are the property sets that Revit will look to export by default if you don't do anything and you just export a by the book 2x3 IFC. So you'll get reference, fire rating, acoustic rating, security rating. But many people want more than that. So we can bulk export every Revit property against those components should we want to, or we can say only use properties that exist within a schedule, which is really useful. You can create a schedule, call that schedule piece set underscore something, and tell it to only export the properties that exist within that schedule, which again allows you to control the level of information what's coming across. Again, look at what your requirements are in your BIM documentation, and you can set these to suit. We can choose in here to work on level of detail, to have a lower level of detail or a higher level of detail. Try different ones if you're getting different results on geometry exports, especially if you've got heavy geometry or complex geometry in the model. Some really useful options under advanced: the ability, if you're seeing issues, to use the active view to create the IFC. So if you come in and say use active view when creating geometry, we can basically use the view that's active to create that geometry when it's exporting out to IFC, which is really useful. So what's on in that view will be what is used to create the IFC. And we can come through and we've got a load of options here. Again, we've got other videos that explain what they are and what they do, so I won't go through all of them. But there are clearly some things that we can do if you're having issues, like if it won't export or if it's crashing. Try turning complex geometry off, come into additional content, say only export things that are visible in view, and then go to use active view when creating geometry. In this case, I'm just going to go by the book, IFC 2x3 to that file, export. And then in the background, whilst that's exporting, maybe I'm going to go and open Navisworks. Not Hyper-V. We don't want Hyper-V. Definitely not. Have I got Navisworks installed? No, I don't have Navisworks installed. Okay, you'll have to take my word for it. We'll link it back in. So that will go ahead and it will create that IFC file. If I now go to my desktop and into that Revit file, we now have this IFC that's been created. Just to show how that works, I'm just going to close this file down. I don't need to save it for the purpose of this. Let's create a new one. Let's imagine that we're inside of Tekla now, or we're inside of ArchiCAD or something else. I can go to Insert, I can go to Link IFC, and I can go ahead and pick the IFC file from my desktop, and it will load that model in as a reference. Generally speaking, it should look the same. It should export in the same kind of quality. Some things will have some tessellation on there, especially spherical or curved edges. But generally speaking, that model will come in, and there we have our model inside of the IFC. So that's the first thing I wanted to take you through. The second thing I want to look at is some of the BIM interoperability tools. Again, Mark's already taken you through how to coordinate your project correctly using your project base points and survey points and angles to true norths, so on and so forth. So you already understand that. You've been through copy monitor, you've been through interference checking and clashing checking, and obviously all of that, as well as your modeling and your concept modeling, your detail modeling, all of that is a digital workflow. It's a building information modeling workflow. But once we've got that, the likes of exporting to IFC and the likes of running some of these BIM interoperability tools become really, really important. So if we come onto a floor plan here, and again, I'll just use the ground floor of the building that you've been using already, and we're going to say that we need to classify some of our data with Uniclass. Uniclass is the common classification system for BIM in the UK, generally Uniclass 2015, or typically it is, or should I say it is Uniclass 2015 in the UK. We will come into here and we can either click assign classification first, or we can go ahead and choose the objects that we want to assign and then click assign classification. So again, I'm just going to pick on this door here. I'm going to grab it, I'm going to go to BIM interoperability tools, and I'm going to say assign classification. The first time you load this, you'll need to load the database. So click here to load the database. And it will take whatever are your default settings and it will load them across into Revit. If you want to change those defaults, just go into the options and you can choose which it's going to use. So we're using Uniclass 2015. Again, it's worth checking these because these update quite regularly. You can modify those as well. If you have a custom one, we can add your own custom files, but let's use the default one out of the box. And then we're basically now looking at the Uniclass 2015 database. You have others here if you're somewhere else in the world. We have on the class for America, Uniformat for other places in the world, so on and so forth. But we're just going to go with Uniclass for now. And then we've got our contacts, our facility, our spaces, and our elements. So from our elements, we want to use a PR code for the purpose of this example, a product code. And you'll notice it's categorized or filtered that category on doors because we have a door selected. And in there, we can then either browse manually through the list of opening products. We could go into door sets and we can say, well, this is a fire door set, for example. It's a 30, 59, 24, 28. Or we can come to the top and we can do a search for the word fire, and it will go ahead and find that particular search for us. So let's select this one and press OK, or assign, sorry. What that will do, if I go ahead and select this component and look at its type properties now, if we scroll down a little bit here, you can see that we have these classification.uniclass.pr number and .pr description. And we've got the same for facilities and systems as well. And you can see that it's given it the classification number here, and it's also given us the description here, which is great. So it's assigning it to that type. Now, the great thing about this is, as well as assigning it that or to that type level, it's also therefore assigned it to any other one of those in the building. So if I go and find a right click and say select all instances in the view, these are all the same door. So if I select this one and go over to edit type, we can also see that inside of there we've got the same PR code in this case has been added, which is great. So we start adding this to our models and it starts detailing those models with PR codes. Do the same thing to the front door here. Let's select it. Let's go to BIM, Interoperability Tools, assign classification, come in here, and maybe this time, let's say this is a composite front door. So let's search for comp, and let's say this is a composite door set, assign. Once again, it will take that information and it will assign that under the uniclass.pr number and the uniclass.pr description. You carry on and do that throughout your file and you will have a Uniclass aligned set of information, which is great. So we have the ability to come in and assign Uniclass classifications and other classifications directly to our components, and we can do that quite quickly. Remember when you're going through to classify other things as well. So if you've got rooms in the model, you can select the rooms, you can go to BIM Interoperability Tools, and you can assign classifications to those spaces. Remember to go in and look at your levels. So if I go to an elevation view, let's go to this east elevation on this original model from Mark. Let's go and select one of these levels. So we'll use level 0 for the purpose of this. Use tab to select that. And then again, we can go to BIM Interoperability Tools, assign classification, and we can give that, we can assign classifications to everything that we need to assign classifications to. Okay, rooms, facilities. Remember to go to manage. Remember to go to project parameters, not project parameters, sorry, project information. We've got classification codes in there. So go through and add these classification codes to everything that you need to classify, which if it's a BIM project, it's going to be everything, to Uniclass 2015. That tool makes that process really straightforward. Again, just make sure your Uniclass tables are up to date. Two more that I want to show you in the time that we've got. First one is the Kobe extension. Again, I'm not going to go through it to the nth degree. That's not why we're here today. I'm just going to talk through some of the workflows, but there are other videos on our YouTube channel. Check it out, give us a like and subscribe, and just reach out to us. If you've got some requirements, if you're having some trouble, or if you need some help with these areas, just reach out and let us know, and we can help you out. But once we've got a model which is fully defined and it's all been classified with uniclass, you will want to use the Kobe extension to A, ready up your components for Kobe generation, and B, to export a Kobe model directly from Revit. Essentially, you start with your contacts. So if I go into contacts here, I'm going to come in and add a contact. So I'm going to say that the contact is me. So robin.beals@nanomachine.co.uk. The company is Man and Machine Limited. Can't spell. I have a new laptop and clearly I'm not used to the keyboard yet. There we go. The phone number is 01844263700. And the category for us will launch the classification manager that I've just shown you. And let's just say for the purpose of this that we are the roles. Let's just say that we are the asset manager. That'll do. We've got some optional information that we could fill out here. So we could say that this is me, MAM01. I'm not going to fill out the rest of that, but you get the idea. We can save and set our contact. We set as many of those up as we need for the people that are working on this project. It's important to note that you've got an import and export tool on here, so all of this can be exported from a project that's been done before and imported back in. But we generally then set up the project where we choose what standards we want to work with, what default units we want to work with within the pound within the Revit system. We choose how information should be pulled. So this is just an architectural model, so I can just say use room for everything. We choose how things should be built from a name perspective inside of Kobe. So use Revit properties with a separator to build a component name. So every space or room, because this is an architectural model, will be called room_1, room_2. We can add fields as necessary. So I can add a field in there and say that we want to have the name. The name could be put above the number. So that could be room_kitchen_1. Or indeed remove number to just have room_kitchen. The same thing is throughout all of these different areas. You just go through and make sure it's as you're being defined within your requirements. So most of these will align to 19650, 8541. I can't remember the new standard that's out for that one. But check what your requirements are from a naming perspective and align these to suit. You then fire through all of these, set the naming and tell it how to grab certain data. So we've just defined classification manager PR codes. So we want to make sure it's they're being pulled into our category for those PR codes. We run through, we tell it to export everything that we want it to export. I'm leaving a lot of these by default. If there's any additional attributes like the door's fire rating, for example, we can come in and grab that specifically to pull additional data onto the Kobe spreadsheet. We tell it how to work with locations and coordinates in the system. We tell it how we want to manage that information through schedules. We can change property mappings. I wouldn't recommend it unless you've got a very specific requirement. Come and speak to us. And then we save our settings. This will update this file with Kobe information ready to be synced. So if I go and have a look at my schedules, we now have a schedule for all of our Kobe components where we can see and change information as we go through. If we go and have a look at our level 0 again and pick up one of these doors that we've been using throughout so far, we can see that we now have instance parameters for the Kobe component. We have type parameters for the Kobe type. They're all empty for now, but you carry on through the process. So we've set our contact, we set up the project, we now choose zones. Kobe must have zones, even if it's just a single one, which is what I'm going to do for today. But generally, your building will have zones which will be made up of several spaces. So we create our zones and then add our rooms to our zone. I'm being very lazy and just putting it into one just for time purposes today, but you would obviously go in and have different zones with the relevant rooms in there as necessary. And you can see this model is dynamic as we go through and select rooms and select zones. Everything starts to update and it visualizes where they are. Once your zones are selected, we choose which objects are going to be maintainable or managed assets within your model. So again, check your requirements, see what's in the asset information requirements, your AIR documentation, and come in and choose what's in there. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to choose doors. I'm going to choose levels because that's what I need for the actual levels in the building. I'm going to choose rooms, and that's going to be okay for the purpose of this. Let's apply and close. And then what we'll have is for my rooms and my doors and my levels, it will start to drive some COBie data. And the COBie data for the things that Revit knows will be filled out automatically. So this door, for example, if I'm pretty sure I selected doors. Maybe I didn't. I haven't updated yet. This door, for example, after I update, will get pulled with information for things that it knows. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say update. Let's update everything. Let's tell it to be updated from, apologies for that. Let's tell it to be updated from by myself. Let's only update elements that I've just said they are COBie objects. We can't work with groups, so we'll skip those. Apply and close. This will go ahead and update those components. So this door now is being created by me. It's created on time and date stamp. It's got a component name and it's got a space name. So it's connected to rooms 107 and rooms 103 because we have room here, which is rooms 103, and we have a room somewhere around here, there we go, which is room 107. So that information that it knows, it will start to pull across. If we look at the component, we can see that it will have pulled up the COBie information in here as well. Again, it won't fill out everything. It doesn't know what the asset type is. It will never know what the warranty information is. There's stuff that you need to fill out automatically, which you do through the schedules it creates for you. But things like this, the COBie category, it's correctly created that with the unit class number, a colon, and a description. It's starting to give you good results. For information that it doesn't know, as I say, just use these schedules. So come into your COBie components, have a look through all the different COBie components that you have in here. You can filter this list as necessary, just turn off the ones that aren't ticked. But if we come down, we can see all of our COBie components and we can just come in and make changes to these in this format. We could link this out with something like DB Link or link it to Excel. So we can come and edit this in Excel and bring it back in. So you've got a whole load of different options there that you can work with. Go through that process several times until you're ready to export your spreadsheet. And then you can create your COBie spreadsheet, save it to that same folder on our desktop, and export that out. Whilst this is nowhere near a correct and finished COBie spreadsheet, it gives you an idea of what we can do using the tools outside the box in Revit to create a bit of information for COBie. As you start going ahead and putting that information together, it might be worthwhile understanding how far am I? How much more have I got to do? And this brings me to my last workflow that I want to talk you through, which is the model checker inside of Revit. This is great for being able to check the validity of what it is that you're doing, especially when you're working with things like COBie. So under model checker up here, let's start with setup. And what we could do to begin with is open a check set. You can create your own check set. It's a list of rules. You can see that Revit comes with a load of default ones, but you can absolutely create your own to validate certain information, model properties, components existing within spaces and stuff like that. What we'll do is I'm just going to say general COBie extension validation and hit OK. There are a few different variations of this that you can download, but what this is going to do is check that, generally speaking, you've got everything that you need to correctly export a COBie file. Again, check that it's valid for what you're being asked for in your AIR, EIRs, and BEPs. But I'm just going to hit save and close on there after selecting that configuration, and then go ahead and hit run. What this will do is it allow us to run this on one or more models, including links, and then run the report. Depending on the size and the complexity of the model, this may take anywhere from a few seconds up to several minutes. But generally speaking, this is checking information. So it's going through all the different COBie components, it's checking their properties, checking that they have data, and that data is valid. If you go and have a look on the internet at more, let's say, traditional COBie checking tools, there's the US Army one that's it's based in DOS. It's a batch file that runs a little script in DOS and checks the same kind of things. But what this is doing is it's telling us that this model is 81% there with regards to what's going on. It's checked 326 things, 255 have passed, but 61 have failed. And then with this, we get a load of results. So it's telling us what it's checked, and then it's telling us what has passed and what has failed. So this isn't checking everything by all means, but it's checking that we have certain properties, and then it's checking that things exist. So all we did was add properties to spaces and doors. So against the facility here, you can see that we don't have a name parameter against the facility. We don't have a category parameter against the facility. And all of these magnifying glasses will zoom to those components as necessary. So if I come to component, we can see that we've got a description missing. And all of these doors that we've added some information to are missing the description. I can click on the magnifying glass and it will take me to that door in a 3D view and allow me to fix that very quickly. We can export to HTML, we can export to Excel, or we can copy that information to our clipboard. But either way, it's giving us some really nice feedback based on where the model is. Again, don't take these checks that are off the shelf as gospel. Make sure they align to what you're being asked to, and you can create your own checks for this fairly easily. It's just based on what components are you looking at, what property are you looking at, and what values are you looking for type scenario. But out of the box in Revit, the ability to check that validation to see if you've got what you require is really, really useful. And again, I implore you to look at some of the different check sets that are available on there to make sure that you're doing what's going on. If I change this to some of the other ones, you get a lot more variety of different results in here. But check it out. But also, by all means, go and create your own check set files. So we can come in and create our own files in here and create our own check sets to make sure this is checking or customize what this is checking by using this configurator. Again, I'm not going to go through this today. It's something to bear in mind. We've got other videos on our YouTube channel that cover this, but we can create our own checks which have our own rules to identify components, check them for specific validation, and then give us reported results. And really, that's all I kind of wanted to cover today. So a fairly broad session, but wanting to dive into some of the specifics. Again, when you're working on a BIM project, it's still very much about the quality of that model, whether it's an early stage model, whether it's a technical design, or wherever you are in a chain, the model quality and accuracy is everything. But once we have that, it's attaching the relevant data that we need for building information modeling projects, whether they're IFC properties, whether they're COBie properties, whether they're classification properties, or just generic requirements that are set out within your AIRs or EIRs or BEPs. We've got the tools here that we need to add those properties and validate those properties. We can export COBie data, we can export IFCs, and customize to the nth degree any of those specific standards. This has been fairly low key to introduce you to some of those concepts and kind of give you a nudge or a point in the right direction. But if you need to do this, if you're struggling with this, some of it can get quite complex. So whilst the tools are designed as being easy to follow, please feel free to reach out. Let us know how you're getting on. Let us know if you have any problems. We have a lot of availability with regards to training, consulting, or help facilities with regards to this. And also check out our YouTube and blogs because there are a number of different written and recorded examples of these tools. And really, that leads me to saying thank you ever so much for joining. Mark Calloway will be back for the next one. So for me, it's farewell for now. Thank you very much for your time. I hope it's been useful and enjoyable, and we will catch you again soon. Take care. Goodbye.